At exactly 2:13 a.m., I woke up to the sound of soft, almost mocking laughter echoing in my ear. I sat bolt upright, my heart pounding so hard, I feared it might burst through my ribcage. In that dim light, I could barely make out the shapes of furniture around me. But one thing was crystal clear. Something was very, very wrong. I swung my legs off the bed, and with hesitant steps, crept toward the living room. The silence of the night was shattered by the distant sound of giggles that sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that the very walls of my home were conspiring to hide a secret. As I tiptoed through the darkened hallway, memories of the past few weeks flashed before my eyes. Whispers of late nights, hushed phone calls, and the lingering scent of unfamiliar cologne that clung to her clothes. We had built a life together, or so I thought, but now every creak of the floor and every flicker of the streetlight outside seemed to scream betrayal. I reached the living room and paused at the threshold, my hand trembling as I gripped the doorknob. The room was bathed in the eerie glow of her phone screen, left carelessly on the coffee table. It was then that I noticed two glasses on the table, one filled with water, and the other with what looked like a half-empty scotch, two sets that should have been meant for just one person. I moved slowly, every step a battle between disbelief and the desperate need for answers. I could still hear her voice, soft and seductive, weaving through the layers of silence. It was as if the conversation was meant for my ears, but was twisted beyond recognition. The living room seemed to stretch out before me like a labyrinth of secrets, each corner holding another clue, another lie waiting to be unraveled. And just as I was about to call out her name, I felt a chill on my neck, an almost imperceptible whisper of wind, or perhaps something more sinister. In that moment, a flood of memories hit me like a tidal wave. I remembered our first date, how she'd smiled that radiant smile that could light up the darkest of rooms, and how I had believed every word she said. But over time, subtle cracks appeared in our perfect facade. A missed phone call here, a hushed conversation there. I had brushed them off, convincing myself it was nothing more than the ordinary rhythm of a long marriage. Yet tonight, every tiny detail screamed of deception. I found myself retracing my steps in my mind, trying to remember every slight gesture, every fleeting moment that I had overlooked in the rush of everyday life. I stepped further into the living room, my eyes darting around, searching for anything that could explain the bizarre scene. Then I saw it, a crumpled note tucked behind a stack of old magazines. My hands trembled as I picked it up, the paper crackling in the quiet room. Scribbled in hasty, jagged handwriting were words that chilled me to the core. Meet me at the old warehouse. Tonight. Don't trust him. My heart sank as the weight of those words pressed on my chest. This wasn't just a late-night flirtation. It was a calculated betrayal that stretched far beyond my worst fears. The note acted as a key, unlocking a cascade of dark, buried memories I had tried so desperately to forget. I recalled a time when she had mentioned a friend from her past, a mysterious, elusive figure whose name she barely whispered, as if the mere sound could summon something dangerous. Back then, I had dismissed it as a figment of her colorful storytelling. But now, that shadow from her past seemed to be resurfacing, casting a long, menacing silhouette over our entire life together. I felt as if I were slipping down a rabbit hole, each new revelation pulling me deeper into a realm of secrets and lies. My mind raced, piecing together the fragments of evidence, the two glasses, the mysterious note, the inexplicable sound of laughter at an ungodly hour. The clues pointed to an elaborate web of deceit, one that spanned years, maybe even decades. It wasn't just about an affair, it was about a life built on hidden truths, where every smile concealed a secret, and every whispered word was a promise of betrayal. I began to wonder if I had ever truly known her at all, or if I had been blind to the silent language of her eyes, the furtive glances, the way she'd always seemed to be somewhere else even when she was right beside me. As I stood there, caught in the grip of a nightmare that blurred the lines between reality and delusion, I realized that this was only the beginning. I knew I had to confront the situation head-on, even though a part of me desperately wanted to retreat into oblivion. I reached for my phone and hesitated. Should I call her? Or should I follow the trail of breadcrumbs that she, or someone, had left behind? The question echoed in my mind, each second stretching out like an eternity. In a split-second decision, I chose the latter. I grabbed my jacket, my pulse quickening, and stepped out into the cool night air. The city outside was a labyrinth of shadows and neon lights, a stark contrast to the comfortable familiarity of our home. I drove aimlessly through deserted streets, each turn deepening the sense of foreboding that had taken root in my soul. The note had mentioned an old warehouse on the outskirts of town, a relic from a bygone era, now abandoned and crumbling, harboring secrets of its own. As I approached the area, the environment grew eerily quiet. The only sounds were the hum of my car engine and the distant echo of urban decay. Parking in a dark, secluded spot, I got out and walked toward the looming structure. Every step toward the warehouse felt like a descent into the underworld. The building's facade was marred by graffiti and neglect, its windows like dark, unblinking eyes watching my every move. The air was thick with the scent of rust and decay, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside, my senses on high alert. The interior was shrouded in shadows, with beams of moonlight piercing through broken windows like shards of silver. I moved cautiously, every sound amplified in the oppressive silence. In a far corner of the warehouse, I found what I was looking for, a small makeshift office space cluttered with papers, photographs, and electronic devices. As I sifted through the items, my heart sank further with each new discovery. There were photos of her, taken at various locations and times, some of which I had never seen before. Each image painted a different picture of a woman I thought I knew, a woman entangled in a secret life that spanned continents, social circles, and time itself. Among the photographs, I found receipts, text messages, and even a series of encrypted emails. They were like pieces of a jigsaw jigsaw puzzle, each fragment hinting at a narrative of infidelity, deceit, and perhaps something even darker, a conspiracy that extended far beyond our relationship. In one email, dated back to a time before we had even met, there was mention of a project that involved high-stakes money and dangerous liaisons. It was cryptic, filled with coded language that I couldn't decipher fully, but one thing was clear. My wife had been leading a double life, one that was as dangerous as it was secretive. I felt a surge of anger, betrayal, and a desperate need to know the truth. Who was this man in the photographs? Was he simply a lover, or was he part of something much larger? A criminal enterprise? A secret society? Or perhaps a hidden world of power and influence that I had never even imagined existed? As I continued to piece together the evidence, the warehouse door creaked behind me. I spun around, my heart hammering in my chest. A shadow loomed at the entrance, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. I couldn't tell if it was one of the figures from the photos or someone else entirely, a silent guardian of the secrets I was unearthing. The figure stepped into the light, and in that split second, our eyes met. There was a glimmer of recognition there, something that spoke of shared guilt and a burden of secrets too heavy to bear. Before I could speak, the figure murmured in a husky voice, "You shouldn't be here," and then vanished into the darkness as quickly as he had appeared. Shaken but undeterred, I pressed on. The next few hours blurred together as I dove deeper into the mystery. I followed digital trails, hacked into old accounts, and even risked my own safety by contacting an old friend who was an expert in cryptography and the occult. This friend had once warned me about the dangers of digging too deep into hidden worlds, of uncovering truths that were meant to remain buried. But now, I was in too deep to turn back. Every new piece of information led to more questions, and each question pulled me further into a labyrinth of lies and half-truths. Late into the night, as I sat in a dingy motel room with my laptop glowing in the darkness, I began to see the bigger picture. The mystery wasn't just about a clandestine affair. It was a web of secrets that connected our lives to a world of crime, mysticism, and forbidden love. It was as if my wife had been living a double life, one where she was both the loving partner I knew and a key player in a dangerous game that spanned cities and continents. The evidence suggested that she was entangled with influential figures, people who could move mountains, people who weren't afraid to eliminate anyone who threatened to expose their secrets. I remember one particular moment that still haunts me, a phone call in the dead of night from a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was calm, almost detached, and yet every word dripped with menace. "You have no idea what you're getting into," the voice warned. "Some truths are better left buried." But once the seed of doubt had been planted in my mind, there was no going back. I spent the following days following up on leads, meeting with dubious characters in smoke-filled back rooms, and even sneaking into places I never thought I would dare to go. Each encounter left me with more questions than answers, and the line between reality and paranoia began to blur. I found myself reliving memories of our happier times, the long walks on the beach, the lazy Sunday mornings spent in bed, the whispered promises of forever. It was maddening to reconcile those images with the betrayal I was uncovering now. Was it possible that the woman I loved had been living two entirely different lives? And if so, how could I ever confront her without shattering everything we had built together? The more I thought about it, the deeper I sank into a vortex of despair and disbelief. I started to wonder if the truth would destroy me completely, if I was destined to be caught in a never-ending spiral of loss and regret. In the midst of this inner turmoil, I received a final message, a cryptic invitation to meet at a secluded park in the early hours of dawn. It was signed simply with the letter M. My gut churned with a mix of dread and determination. I knew this was my last chance to confront the truth, to face the woman who had led me on this tortuous journey of betrayal and deceit. With nothing left to lose, I drove to the meeting spot, my mind racing with possible scenarios. The park was deserted, bathed in the pale light of a rising sun that barely cut through the lingering shadows of the night. I waited by a weathered bench, the cool morning air nipping at my skin, as the minutes ticked by like an eternity. Then, out of the silence, she appeared. My wife, dressed casually, almost as if she hadn't just spent a night living a double life. But there was something in her eyes, a glint of guilt mixed with defiance, that told me this was the moment of reckoning. I approached slowly, every step weighted with years of unanswered questions. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She didn't say much at first, just stared at me with eyes that seemed to hold a universe of secrets. Then, with a trembling sigh, she began to recount a story that shattered everything I believed. Turned out that her life had never been as simple as I had imagined. Years ago, before we even met, she had been involved with a man whose charm and mystery had drawn her into a world of danger and passion. That man, whose name she had kept locked away in her heart, was part of an underground network, a group involved in high-stakes deals, covert operations, and mystic rituals that blurred the lines between reality and fantasy. As she spoke, her voice wavered between regret and relief. She told me of secret meetings in abandoned warehouses, coded messages exchanged over burner phones, and clandestine rendezvous that spanned multiple cities. Every detail was interwoven with emotions, fear, excitement, and a haunting sadness for a life she could never truly escape. I listened, numb, as layer upon layer of her hidden existence unfolded before me like a dark fairy tale. I learned that she had been forced into this life by circumstances beyond her control, a tangled web of debts, threats, and promises that were impossible to keep. The man from her past had once promised her freedom, chance to start over. But as time went on, that promise had dissolved into a bitter reality of lies and exploitation. Yet, as unbelievable as it all seemed, there was more. In a series of tear-streaked confessions, she revealed that her involvement with that secret world wasn't entirely by choice. She had fallen in love love with the thrill of it, the adrenaline rush of living on the edge of danger. It was a side of her that I had never known, a side that was both alluring and terrifying. I was caught in a storm of conflicting emotions, anger at the betrayal, sorrow for the loss of innocence, and a perverse curiosity about the world she had once inhabited. I realized that the mysterious man, the dangerous liaisons, and the cryptic messages were not just elements of infidelity, they were part of a larger, twisted tapestry that had been woven long before I ever became a part of her life. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the park seemed to transform around us, the early morning mist dissolving into harsh, unforgiving light. The finality in her tone made it clear that this conversation was not just about our marriage, it was about the life she had once led, and the choices that had brought her here. In that moment, I was forced to confront the duality of her existence, the loving wife I thought I knew, and the enigmatic woman whose past was steeped in secrets and danger. Her revelations left me reeling, but they also ignited something deep within me, a burning desire to uncover every last truth, no matter how painful or dangerous it might be. Determined to find answers, I embarked on a journey that took me back through the corridors of her hidden past. I met old acquaintances, delved into obscure records, and even risked my life to piece together the fragments of a story that spanned decades. I discovered that the network she had once been part of had ties to powerful figures in the underground world, people whose influence reached into the highest echelons of society. The deeper I dug, the more I realized that the mystery wasn't just about her infidelity. It was about a legacy of secrets and a dangerous game of power and betrayal that had been unfolding long before our paths crossed. Night after night, I followed trails that led me to abandoned clubs, derelict factories, and remote hideouts where whispers of the past lingered in the stale air. In one forgotten corner of the city, I uncovered a faded journal hidden inside a rusted safe. Its pages were filled with cryptic entries, sketches, and names that I couldn't place. Among the scribbles, one name kept recurring, a name that sent chills down my spine. It was the same name she had mentioned in passing during our conversation in the park, a name that now resonated with the weight of a lifetime of secrets. As I read through the journal, I realized that her involvement in that dark world had been orchestrated by forces beyond her control, and that she had been both a pawn and a willing participant in a dangerous game of manipulation and power. The more I learned, the more I felt the boundaries between love and betrayal, truth and deception, blur into a single, inescapable reality. I began to see our entire relationship through a new lens, one that revealed the intricate interplay of hidden motivations and secret alliances. Every loving smile, every tender touch, suddenly seemed tainted by the knowledge of what lay beneath the surface. And yet, despite the devastation of these revelations, I couldn't help but be drawn deeper into the enigma of her past. There was a strange beauty in the chaos, a magnetism in the forbidden that I couldn't resist. Weeks turned into months as I waged a silent war against the truth. I questioned my own sanity, wondering if I was capable of surviving the unraveling of everything I had once held dear. Friends and family, oblivious to the storm raging inside me, continued with their lives while I fought to piece together a puzzle that was as dangerous as it was compelling. I found solace in fleeting moments of clarity, a quiet conversation with an old friend who had once warned me about the perils of digging too deep, a chance encounter with someone who had known her in another life, a stolen moment of reflection in the silence of the night. Each piece of the puzzle brought me closer to an understanding of the man behind the myth, the secret lover who had been both a catalyst and a casualty of her hidden world. The final breakthrough came unexpectedly. I received a package in the mail, a small unmarked box containing a flash drive and a handwritten letter. The letter was unsigned, but its contents spoke volumes. On the flash drive were files, documents, and videos that left no doubt. The evidence of a love affair that transcended time and boundaries, linking my wife to a man whose identity was shrouded in mystery. The videos were grainy, recorded in dark corners of forgotten places, showing clandestine meetings, coded conversations, and even a confrontation that ended in violence. My hands shook as I watched the scenes unfold, each frame a testament to a world I had only glimpsed through the shadows. It was in those final moments, as I sat alone in the quiet of my apartment, that I began to understand the full magnitude of the betrayal. This was not a simple case of infidelity. It was a labyrinthine tale of lost dreams, dangerous liaisons, and choices made under duress. The man in the videos, whose face was always obscured by darkness or masked by clever editing, emerged as the orchestrator of a plan that had ensnared my wife long before I ever became a part of her life. His motives were as murky as the murky world he inhabited, a world where loyalty was measured in secrets and trust was nothing more than a commodity to be bought and sold. As I pieced together the final threads of this tangled narrative, I realized that the answer was both devastating and liberating. My wife, the woman I had once believed in with all my heart, was a survivor of a past that she could neither fully embrace nor entirely escape. In her secret life, she had been forced to make choices that haunted her every day, a series of decisions driven by love, fear, and a desperate need for freedom. The realization stung like a physical blow, yet amidst the pain, there was a strange sense of clarity. I finally understood that the infinite immersion of our lives, the way one story had bled into another like a cascade of hidden truths, was the very essence of the human experience. Now, standing at the crossroads of revelation and resolution, I faced a choice that would determine the rest of my life. I could let the weight of betrayal crush me, or I could choose to see it as a catalyst for change, a chance to rebuild what had been broken. The final confrontation loomed ahead, a moment when everything would be laid bare. I arranged to meet my wife one last time, in a familiar cafe that had once been the backdrop of our happiest moments. There, amid the clatter of cups and the murmur of conversation, we sat down to face the unvarnished truth. As I looked into her eyes, I saw not the deceit of a traitor, but the sorrow of a woman who had been forced into a world she never wanted. With tears glistening in her eyes, she whispered a confession that unraveled the last threads of our shared past. She admitted that the man from her past had come back into her life, promising her a way out of the dangerous web she had once been trapped in. His return had been both a chance at redemption and a trigger for everything that had gone wrong. In a desperate bid to protect the fragile remnants of the life we had built, she had hidden her involvement, hoping that the truth would never come to light. But as it turned out, secrets have a way of surfacing, no matter how deep you bury them. In that final, raw moment of vulnerability, as the cafe's ambient noise faded into insignificance, I realized that the infinite immersion of our lives had led us to this point, a point where the past, present, and future converged in a single, breathtaking instant. The layers of deception, the cascade of secrets, and the relentless pursuit of truth had all culminated in this bittersweet confrontation. And then, as if on cue, the door to the cafe swung open, and in walked a man whose presence radiated an aura of quiet authority. It was him, the man from the videos, the enigma who had been the linchpin of her secret world. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. His eyes locked onto mine, and in that silent exchange, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Truth was finally out, and the final act of this twisted drama was about to unfold. In that split second, I understood that every secret, every lie, and every hidden moment had been leading to this one confrontation. The moment when everything would be revealed, for better or for worse. I took a deep breath and finally spoke the words that had been weighing on me for months. "Tell me, why did you do it?" Her gaze shifted between me and him, and in that charged silence, she began to speak, the words tumbling out in a rush of emotion and regret. She explained that her actions were born out of desperation, that she had once been caught between a rock and a hard place, forced to choose between the man she loved and a world that threatened to consume her. It wasn't just an affair, it was a battle for survival, a struggle to reclaim the pieces of herself that had been stolen by a past she couldn't escape. As she spoke, I felt a strange mix of anger and sympathy. The man from her past, standing silently by our table, gave a slight nod as if acknowledging the painful truth of her confession. The weight of our shared history, the betrayal, and the inexplicable draw of that hidden world pressed down on us like a physical force. I realized that while the truth was crushing, it also held the key to our future, a future that would either be defined by endless regret or by the possibility of redemption and renewal. In that final moment, with the man from her past watching our every move, I reached a decision. I decided that I would no longer let the secrets of yesterday dictate the course of my life. I would confront the demons that had haunted our marriage and try to rebuild something new from the ruins of our shattered trust. It wasn't an easy choice, and I knew that the road ahead would be fraught with uncertainty and pain. But as I looked at her tearful eyes, and then at the resolute face of the stranger who had been the catalyst for it all, I felt a spark of hope. A hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way back to a place where love was enough to overcome the darkest of betrayals. And then, as the final shards of night melted into the pale light of dawn, I understood the truth in its entirety. The infinite immersion of our lives, the way each hidden story had flowed seamlessly into the next, had shown me that even in the midst of the deepest betrayal, there was a chance for redemption. With a trembling voice I said, "I forgive you, not because the pain was gone, but because I recognize that our past, as twisted and painful as it was, had given birth to a future filled with possibility." In that moment, standing in the quiet haze of early morning, I realized that the journey through secrets and lies was not the end, but a new beginning. And as the man from her past stepped back into the shadows, leaving us to face our own truth, I finally saw the path forward, a path paved with honesty, vulnerability, and the promise of renewal. And then I understood that even the darkest secrets, when confronted with courage, could light the way to a new dawn.